Welcome to my weekly review. Today is Saturday, May 3, and you are looking at a daily chart of the Nasdaq, which advanced 267 points or 1.51%. So another follow-through day, essentially, as we pile up the follow-through day upon follow-through days on the Nasdaq. So, everybody's getting a little excited, getting a little giddy. The index has seen the 10 EMA rally through the 21. And the index itself has seen the low of the session above the 21, and it's also closing above the 10, the 21, and the 50. So all that is good, but it's still trading below the long-term moving average, the 200. So people ask me like, what would get you, more bullish or more excited or more invested in the market or for me to turn on the green signal? I'd like to see it trade and hold above the 200 moving average, of course. And, above that old high there of 18,281 from March 25, which is, not that long ago. So the Nasdaq has some work to do still. It's, well off the lows from the 14,000, 784, when there was a lot of tariff talk, we got liberated, and I don't want to get into that. I'll just say that from December 16th, high of 20,204 to 14,784. That was a 27% correction in the index. That is a significant downturn, a bear market, if you will. And now, it hit bottom and it's making its way up. I've had arguments with my friends about this three-wave down thing, and I'm saying that was one wave. It rallied back up. That was the second wave. It had this classic bear wedge pattern here, and then that was your third leg down. And now we're starting to rally back up with a, V-shaped type of rally. I don't predict. I just take it one day at a time and just interpret what's happening. And like I said, we've had these subsequent follow-through days since the original one. So that makes me more, I don't know, encouraged or more confident in this rally. And what I look for in market rallies is leading stocks. Do we have leading stocks? Because we don't have leading stocks and we have no rally. So at MC Stock Charts, we've identified quite a few leading stocks here recently, and even more last week added to the list. So that's very encouraging as the rally, expands. We see the breadth, of leadership broadening out, and that's what we want to see, and not just, the Mag 7 leading higher. And I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, 27% correction, very significant bear market. And if we go back, I think I might have to go back even further. I do. We've had four bear markets in the last 7, 8 years, we'll call it. The 2018 decline there was a nasty one, and then the COVID bear market, the 2022 when Powell was raising interest rates bear market. Now we've had this 27% downturn due to tariffs. So anyway, no geopolitical talk here. I just want to talk stocks and indexes, and since I'm going over the Nasdaq, last week I said was a positive week. It was up nearly 600 points and 3.42%. So, in the volume, I'm not really looking at the volume. We're seeing a lot of penny stocks with massive volume. So that skews the data. But anyway, we had this reversal on this week here. And then a slight little pullback, some profit taking, non-believers. And then we had 2 weeks ago, nearly a 7% rally, and then last week, 3.5% rally. So the market's heading in the right direction. But once again, on the daily, I just want to see it above the 200, please. I want to see the 10 and the 21 rally through the 50, as those are your shorter term moving averages. So as we get into this, hopefully, new rally, we're just taking it one day at a time. We need to look at some leaders. Before I get there, I want to go through some earnings reports and just look at the SPY here. It's very similar action to the NASDAQ. Still, 1.1% below the 200 SMA. Did I give you the NASDAQ? It was like 1.9% below. Yeah, 1.9% below. So that could do that in a day, right? The way it's been rallying. So very encouraged by the recent action, but I don't want to predict anything like we're going to have a V-shaped rally and make new highs. But you have to be open-minded that we could definitely take out that 20,204 very quickly. And you also have to be open-minded that we can get rejected at 200 and make a new low. Both scenarios, You have to be open-minded and flexible to both scenarios. And you can, it's okay to have expectations. Like I expect this rally to continue, but if not, then you have to have a plan. What is your plan if the market, is rejected at the 200 and starts to fail and sell off sharply? Because when the sell-offs come, they sell off sharply, like here and here. You lose a lot of money in a very short period of time. Anyway, I'm going to move on, just get to some of the earnings last week, because I believe earnings is, eventually over time will, kind of drive your stock higher. And if you don't have sales and earnings growth, your stock's probably not going to have a sustainable long-term rally. SOFI reported last week, pretty strong report and, decent response. It closed above its 50. It closed above its moving averages here, which is encouraging. And I want to get to Spotify, which reported last Tuesday morning, I believe, and shook off real hard on Tuesday down to 540. Then the next day rallied up to 615. That was a buy. We put this on MC stock charts on Tuesday or Wednesday morning, I believe. That was Tuesday. Yeah, the Wednesday rally there. Had an inside day on Thursday and then rallied back above. That's your classic Livermore shakeout plus, it's shakeout plus 10 on a $30 stock, $3, but 10% move from 540 to the next day at 615. That's a $65 move. So more than a 10% move on Spotify. And if you identified that and picked that up, congratulations. That's one of the leading stocks that I'm talking about here. Leading stocks don't have to be making new highs, but they do have to be above their moving averages and showing strength. And I'm going to get to that in a minute here, but I want to get to some other stocks. Starbucks reported last week, and sometimes you have to read, the room a little bit here. With Starbucks, they've had 5 quarters in a row of declining same-store sales. You could just, write that off as the poor leadership or whatever, but I believe the Dutch Bros and maybe to a lesser extent Dunkin' Donuts is taking market share from them. Certainly Dutch Bros in the United States. But it used to be like when Intel reported AMD would skyrocket because everybody knew that AMD was taking market share from Intel. Kind of the same thing here with Starbucks. Dutch Bros is taking market share. Now, if you own Starbucks and you saw this low of 76.15, I'll get the day for you here on April 7th, which there was a lot of lows that day. Then it retested it after earnings report on Tuesday, retested that low of 75.50 and then bounced higher. So that's kind of telling me that, that's probably the low for Starbucks. I'm not a real bottom, picker, but I'd say that 75, it actually undercut it a little bit. So, and then rallied. So when the stock doesn't sell off further on bad news, and that was a bad report, then you're probably low as in, and that's a good sign. I'm not a bottom fisher. I'm not interested in this stock, but I am just pointing out stocks that make don't go down further after a negative report. Same with Caterpillar. They reported and this thing just went higher. So that's telling you something, right? The market's telling you that, hey, we've heard the bad news. We know bad news is coming and we're still buying this stock and taking it higher. So to me, the low is in on Caterpillar there at 267. Closed Friday at 323 above the 10, above the 21, above the 50. So, if you're a Caterpillar long-term holder, which, a lot of people are, it pays a nice dividend. It's been a big winner for a long period of time. Pays you what, less than 2% to hold it. But, Caterpillar, I'm going to move on. Novartis reported, once again, this is a big, 228 billion market cap drug company. So, one drug is not going to make or break this company. But I want to point out that their multiple sclerosis drug grew 43%. That's kind of what you expect in a growing addressable market. And so that leads me to TGTX. Once again, you got to read the room. These guys are taking market share. Now, the stock is up a lot. They're going to report earnings on Monday morning before they open. And you could see that people put two and two together and it ran up sharply ahead of the print and now pulled back on Friday. If I switch that EMA to 5, excuse me, it's on the 10 there, 42.29. It's 2.7% above its 10. So pulling back ahead of a print, I kind of like that. I think they're going to have strong numbers. I don't know how the stock's going to respond. I think the options market is showing like a 6% implied volatility, but we'll see what happens with TGTX. But Novartis, good report. Their drugs are this is a nice company here, and it's got exposure to if you're into the overseas market, Swiss company. All right. Who else reported? Oh, the data storage companies reported. Western Digital, nice report, nice response. And also Seagate Technology had a nice report and a nice response as well. They had, they raised on all metrics. A very nice report there. I was looking for some pin action, but not really getting it here. And some of the other data storage plays like Pure Storage and Micron, yeah, not really feeling it here. I think you'd want to, if you want to, this is a very cyclical business, and you kind of want to own the best stocks. If you want to own that, look at the group, the industry group is 178, so I'm not interested in that. Just identifying, strong reports from last week, which leads me to Wednesday, Microsoft. Nice report, nice response on Thursday, and then follow through it on Friday. So Microsoft, is a big leader of the markets, the indexes. It's in the Dow, the S&P, the Nasdaq, a massive market cap, 3.2 trillion. Meta reported also. Meta's got problems with the FTC. So they had a good report, but not as strong as response as Microsoft, up 4% Thursday and Friday, though. So nice report from Meta and nice response. Robinhood reported Wednesday after the close too. And this to me looks like accumulation here. Didn't have a big move, after earnings report. Like I mentioned Spotify earlier, where it shook out, had the big shakeout and then rallied. This one just kind of pulled back to its 10 EMA, just going sideways. To me, I like Robinhood on the monthly. I'm a long-term holder in Robinhood. I believe that this is like Charles Schwab of the 90s. If you are familiar with Schwab, if I just go back about 10 years, you could see Schwab just a monster here in the 90s because it had the technology that other brokerages didn't have. And that's what Robinhood has right now. And I believe Robinhood is going to be like a Schwab in the 90s for the roaring 20s, for the next 5, 10 years. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I like Robinhood. Lilly reported. Now, Lilly was a good report here. I got to get off the monthly charts. Lilly's been a winner a long time too, but they had a negative response to, help me out here, folks. They had a negative response to, Novo Nordisk signed with CVS. That was it. And so Lilly sold off with that on Thursday, had an inside day on Friday. But to me, I mean, these guys are going at 45%, strong. They actually have the better, compound than Wegovy and Ozempic. So Mounjaro and Zepbound, they'll survive with their drugs. It got hit on that news with Novo Nordisk signing with CBS. So anyway, we've seen a lot of wonky earnings, move. So you can't read into one day's action really, unless you're looking at WGS, which got hammered down. What was it, 42%? That'll hurt your portfolio if you're long in that one. So that's your negative response. And it was in the outhouse, drug stocks, penthouse or outhouse. You got to be careful. Roblox reported this is one of the leaders now. Why do I call this one a leader? It's not making a new high. This is still consolidating within a base. Well, look at the 10, EMA. This thing's riding, finding support at the 10. The 10 rallied through the 50. The 21 rallied through the 50. And now these moving averages are stacked 10, 21, 50. This thing's power trending higher. And as long as that low stays above the 10, I'm all in on Roblox. That's definitely one of your leaders. Nice response to a nice report. That's what you want to see. Good news rewarded. That tells me that the market has changed from just selling off everything, indiscriminately. Power, I've got to get to this one because this is the data center plays, and they had a nice response. Once again, this kind of looks like, Robinhood just kind of trading sideways for 3 or 4 or 5 days. they get the report and then boom, blasted higher. So Quanta Services, I call it power because of the ticker symbol, but yeah, nice response. And if you own Sterling, people ask me about Sterling. They're going to report on Monday. So will we get a similar reaction? We'll have to wait and see. But Sterling is definitely one of these data center plays and had this nice cut pattern, just sold off with everything else, right? February and March were brutal. The beginning of April was brutal. And now, we're recovering. So if Sterling has a good report, I would expect a good response. Amazon and Apple reported on Thursday. Enough said. Enough has been said about these two. And to me, if you own the Mag 7, you're going to lag the rally because this rally is looking for new growth stocks. You have to find the new growth stocks, and that is what's going to propel you. I've mentioned Spotify and TGTX and Roblox, and there's Robinhood. There's a lot of them to buy here, and you don't have to just stick in the Mag 7 and, just clinging to those old leaders. This is Reddit. Now, this one had a negative response. It's trading like 140 after hours on Thursday, and then on Friday, kind of sold off a little bit. It rallied mid-session, then sold off into the close. You had open lower, man. If you bought, calls there and sold them here, that was a nice trade. Nice big move off the lows at 111, rallied up to like 125. Okay, then sold off. But to me, this thing's just gonna get rolling here. I think, yeah, I just think option shenanigan plays a big role here on these Fridays, and profit taking into the weekend. Maybe it's had a nice move off those lows from that April 7 week. What is it, April 11? Yeah, it was at 79. Okay, closed at 113. So that's still a nice move. I think going forward, though, this 61% growth and triple digit earnings growth, that's going to catch some eyes on Wall Street. And the last one I think I'm going to get to is Duolingo. So Duolingo, Spotify, man, you can't ignore this. Once again, this is this sideways type of action like we've seen in a lot of stocks. Then all of a sudden they get the new data point and boom, 21% move. That's a move not to be ignored. Dan, 21% move. Thank you very much. Nearly 200% above the average daily volume, making new highs. So, there's a leader that, is making new highs along with Spotify, along with Netflix. And I've just got to get to some of the leaders. I talk about leaders. You can't have a rally without leading stocks. Netflix was one of the first out of the gate here. Because they reported early sooner too, but this is their earnings response, and it's just been rallying. I am going to switch this to the five since I'm getting to leaders here. Netflix definitely a leader out of the gate. If you don't own it, I want to own Netflix. Well, buy it when it pulls back to the five. Hold your nose, close your eyes. Don't buy at the high here, 1159. Let it come in to that five. You can clearly see this thing is, so being supported at the five EMA. So, don't buy a spike, buy a dip. And a dip doesn't even have to be, $10 lower. It could just be, flat as that moving average rises. Palantir, definitely a leader. I know a lot of people want to argue with me. It's not making new highs. Well, look at the five here. Once again, the 10, the 21, and the 50 are stacked. It's being supported at that at 5 EMA. Look, on Thursday, and everybody's whining about it. Oh, it's sold off. Well, it has earnings on Monday, and it found support at that 5, didn't it? Now, do I want to buy it here up at 124 ahead of earnings? No. I'll wait for the data point, let some profit takers come in, let it pull in a little bit. That 5 EMA on Friday is 117, so maybe I can get it below 117 on a good report. Obviously, if they have a stinker and drop a bomb on it, I'm not interested. But right now, this one's showing leadership and trending higher. And as a trend trader, that's the type of thing that I gravitate towards. MicroStrategy, another one, it's not making new highs. How come that one's a leader? Well, it's off the lows from 231 to 401. Thank you very much. We'll take a $170 move. They reported last week. I forgot to put that on my earnings report, but it's a leader that reported. Earnings are behind it. How do I know it's leader? Well, look at the 5 EMA. I mean, it's riding the 5. The 21 is it's got to drop a long way to hit the 21. And those drove through the 50, way back here. So that was kind of your buy point there, like 304. And if you didn't get it there, the 343. We've had this one on our ready list for a couple weeks, and now it's kind of extended. So if you want to own a leader, if you're in the ninth inning, you're down by one run. And who do you want up to bat? Do you want that, that AAA hitter off the bench, the Scribini, or do you want, your best hitter, your 350 hitter? I want my 350 hitter. That's MicroStrategy. That's Netflix. That's Palantir. That's Spotify. That's Duolingo. That's CrowdStrike. Another one, still consolidating in a base, had this cup with handle. But look at the five here. The 5 EMA crossed above the 50, the 21 crossed above the 50. This is, a big move right there at 386. It had that old buy point there at 389 out of that base. Another one here at 392, and now here it is at 440. They don't report earnings till the end of the month. So another leader not making new highs, but above the five. And that's talking to you. It's screaming leadership. And so those are the stocks that I'm interested in. Uber is another one. This one to me is a little slower of a mover, but still showing leadership. Why? It's not making new highs. Well, once again, the 5, the 21 crossed above the 50, and it's finding support at this green line, which is the 5. So let the green line be your guide. If you're trying to get into, some of these stocks here, I mentioned Robinhood earlier and TGTX. I'm not going to go back to them. I don't think. How about this defense names? These ones have caught my eye. I know my buddy Kevin at Malibu Invest likes Joby and Archer, but I've got to go Howmet here. This one is screaming higher. Since it's a weekly review, I've got to go to the weekly chart. Just a nice 13% move last week. I mean, this is a defense stock, right? I mean, these things are showing strength. This thing is way above its 5, 6.6% above its 5. Couple other ones in this group, if you'll bear with me. This is Mercury Systems still consolidating within a base. Look at this tight trading right at the 5 here. Popped on Friday. Yeah, I like that one. That one may show up on my ready list pretty soon here. Not giving anything away. KTOS, another defense name. Yeah, nice pop on Friday. Consolidating, trading tight within a base. I love that. And now trading above moving averages. And what was the other one? What is it? Leonardo da Vinci? Yeah, this one popped on Thursday and Friday. A 9% move followed up by a 4.5% move. So that makes it, 13% week. We'll take that. So don't ignore the aerospace and defense. I mentioned um, Kevin's stock. He likes this one. Why not? I mean, the 5 and the 21 crossed above the 50. So that's a buy to me. 918. I don't particularly like stocks below $10, but I might make an exception here at 929. And what did I say? The other one was is Joby Aviation. Yeah, I'm not a bottom feeder. And this one, the 5 and the 5 crossed above the 50, but the 21 still below it. Definitely one to watch here at 686 if you're into that space. It's definitely one, top 5 group. All right, I'm going to move on. I think I think I've covered enough stuff here. Oh, I've got to get to, Berkshire Hathaway reported today. I'm going to get to next week's earnings, but these guys started early with their meeting today. They packed the house in Nebraska. I just want to point out to some folks who are picking on Warren, Uncle Warren, he lost him off his fastball. The old man doesn't know what he's doing. Oh, really? This is Berkshire Hathaway for the last 5 years. This is your S&P 500. He's lapping the field. If you're indexing, I think you can index with BRBK. I mean, you definitely outperform. This is 5-year comparison chart. So, you could definitely park some money. And when the market's corrected recently, I told you about that Nasdaq 20%, 27% correction. What was BRBK doing? Hello. Yeah, it was acting as a safe haven, and investors were flocking to BRBK. And so this thing to me is, if you want to index, sure, you can buy the QQQs or the Nasdaq or the SPY. Why not buy BRBK? I mean, it's a safe haven stock. Anyway, that's enough of that for BRBK. I've promoted Mr. Warren Buffett enough. There's some investors like Bill O'Neill, Warren Buffett, and Peter Lynch that I like their style a lot more than others, and so just got to pump up Warren there. I did mention TGTX. They report Monday morning. Yeah, it's one that I hold. They're best in class drug, and there's the market. The barriers to entry here in this market are pretty significant. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of competition. They're stealing market share from Roche's drug, and I just showed you Novartis Kesimpta is growing nicely. These guys are taking share. How much we don't know. We're going to hear on Monday. I'm expecting about 130 million in sales, so 108 to 130. Anything over 127 will be triple digit sales growth, which is fine. And then earnings. I'm interested in the earnings. Are they going to have a obviously they're going to have triple digit earnings coming off a negative number. They're going to deliver, a dollar in earnings this year. And I don't know what a dollar in earnings is worth for a stock growing at 100%. I would think it would be more than $40. It's got a 6.8 billion market cap with what did I say? I think they're going to raise guidance to about six what no no not six probably 570 to 580 something like that. They're going to sandbag, but anyway, something to look forward to on Monday morning. Palantir reports on Monday as well. Definitely interested in this one. This one I'm holding along with TGX into earnings. Sometimes if you want to have a long run, you want to own a stock, for years and years and years, you say, oh, I bought Apple in 2004 or whatever. Well, you have to hold through about 100 earnings calls if you want the big money, and that's a Livermore thing, right? The money is made in the sitting and the waiting and not in trading in and out of things. So sure, you can lighten up, and if it pulls back, buy more, but have a big core of these leading stocks like Palantir, which I believe is going to be a big winner in AI. HIMS is going to report as well. This is another one that I like. Well, leading stock, how do I know? Well, these moving averages are trading through, well, the 50 is downtrending, but the 5 is definitely trading higher, 38.69 an area of interest. We'll just have to hear what they have to say. They recently signed with Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly to sell their compound. So, that's only like 10 or 12% of their revenue. They have a big platform. So anyway, this is kind of a subscriber thing, kind of like Netflix and Spotify, where they're trying to add subscribers, like Amazon back in the day, and more and more eyeballs. The bigger the platform down the road. So they're looking down the road. All right, who else is reporting this week that of interest? I'm not interested in Ford. BRBR, kind of interested in this one just to see what they have to say. Consolidating within a base, trading tight. I like that. So we'll see what they have to say on 5/5, which is Monday. Datadog's reporting. I'm not going to go over this. It's below its moving averages. I'm not interested in stuff like that. I don't know why I put that in there. Race, Ferrari. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about autos recently. We'll see what they have to say. And DigitalOcean, yeah, another one of these software names that have been punished. We'll have to see what they have to say. And then Constellation reports on the 6th. Yeah. So these are the stocks that got whacked on January 27th. That shot across the bow, right? You had to pay attention to this move here. 20% move. VST got whacked. They're going to report this week as well. They're starting to recover, but the one in this group here, if you're interested, is a GEV. This one's recovered the best. How do I know? Well, it's trending with its 5. The 5 and the 21 rallied through the 50 once again. I know Pattern Rec's picking this up with a cup with a handle, but to me, I would get in here. 389, call it 390 would be a buy point area. They've already reported earnings. That's behind them. And anyway, I digress. AMD reports Tuesday. SMCI, they already guided lower. Bleh. What else do we have? Oh, Upstart. Do you know what they do? It doesn't matter. We want to make money. That's it. So, okay. Arista Networks is another one that reports Tuesday. And then I mentioned Uber earlier. The leader, they report Wednesday. So a lot of people are interested in the Uber report. Disney, VST. I'm not going to go through that. ADMA reports. Now, this one, they just got FDA approval. That was the spike here on Monday last week. And so now it's trading tight, pulling back on lower volume to a moving average. I think they're going to raise guidance. I think they're going to have a strong report. I think the stock's probably going to respond positively, but I wouldn't be, loading up, 50% of my portfolio in ADMA prior to the prior to the earnings report. You have to practice some risk management. But I think that will be good as well as App 11. App 11 has been hit with like a gazillion short reports recently. And it sold off. Yeah, sure, with the market down to what is this? 200. Okay. And then it got more short reports. It was the Fuzzy Panda and the Bear Cave and anybody who's doing short reports shorted this thing and it just keeps moving higher. Now it's above its 50. They're going to report on Wednesday. I think it's going to be good. I think the stock's going to pop. 352 is definitely an area of interest. Probably going to get back to 400. If it crashes and burns, oh well, that's why play risk management. But just wait for the data point and see what the reaction is. AXON reports as well. Nice consolidation here. This thing got whacked, like a lot of stocks. And then Carvana reports. So I'm looking forward to that one. I think that's going to be another good one. Shopify on Thursday. And then that's a nice double bottom base pattern there, and the five starting to go through the 21. So we'll see if they can deliver the goods and pop through that double bottom base. So if you missed out on prior leaders and you're looking for, some new leaders, maybe, App 11, which was a prior leader, Shopify, which was a prior leader, maybe they can lead again, like a Netflix. So keep an open mind. The greatest shoe company in the world reports Thursday before the bell. They moved some of their manufacturing from China to Vietnam a while ago. I don't know what's going on, like I say, geopolitically. So we're going to hear from them. I think they kind of regret buying Hey Dude. That thing is not gaining traction at all. They cannot figure it out. But they saw Deckers by Hoka and Hoka kick butt, and now that they can't replicate it with Hey Dude. So they've got some good people there. We'll see if they can figure it out. LNG reports as well. This is a oil and gas transportation pipeline stock. And then in the afternoon here, we're going to hear from Coinbase. I don't know, Coinbase, this thing can't get out of its own way. And then TTD, a former darling, which is in the doghouse. A couple other ones, Pinterest that I'm interested in, pins, yes. Cloudflare, and the last one is HubSpot, a software name. All right, that's it. Thank you for watching. Rally looks good. A lot of leading stocks that I showed you today. So some prospects for more leading stocks. We got a ready list. It looks pretty good for Monday morning. I'm going to have a new ready list on Monday morning. That one could be on there. I like that one as well. I digress. Anyway, big earnings week this week is going to move the markets a lot. Stay positive, stay humble, and never give up. Thank you for watching.